now the galaxy realizes why you never challenge humanity. Part 1. The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a hiss. Ambassador James Walker fought to keep his expression neutral as he stepped inside, the first human ever to enter this legendary hall of power. The circular room stretched upward for what seemed like miles, with tiered seating holding representatives of over 700 alien species. Holographic nameplates hovered before each delegation, written in the universal script that Earth had only learned to decode 3 years ago. James swallowed hard. This wasn't just an audience, it was a trial. Humanity stood accused. "Step forward, human," boomed a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. At the center of the chamber stood a raised dais, where 7 beings sat in ornate chairs. The Council of 7, the oldest, most powerful species in the known galaxy. Their bodies were diverse in form, the insectoid Vrex with their compound eyes, the gaseous lumen contained in specialized environment suits, the reptilian Dracar with scaled skin that shifted colors with their moods. But all shared one thing: eyes that held the weight of thousands of years of civilization. James stepped onto the small platform at the center of the chamber floor, aware that every movement was being analyzed by countless alien minds. The gravity felt slightly stronger here than Earth standard, a subtle reminder that this was their territory, not his. "Ambassador Walker of Earth," said the archivist, a tall, willowy being with translucent skin through which James could see multiple hearts beating. "You have been summoned to answer for your species' actions." The main display activated, showing footage of human ships establishing colonies on 3 different worlds over the past decade. Earth had expanded rapidly since discovering faster-than-light travel, establishing footholds on 11 planets outside their solar system. These worlds, continued the archivist, were cataloged for future development by the Orvax Federation, who filed proper claim documents over 300 years ago. James kept his face neutral even as his mind raced. This was why he'd been sent. His background in both intergalactic, law and tactical intelligence made him uniquely qualified for what was clearly a trap disguised as diplomacy. "The penalty for claim violation is severe," growled Counselor Dracar, scales flashing red with aggression, especially from a species so new to galactic society. "Your ignorance is not an excuse," murmurs spread through the gathered representatives. Many had expected the human to plead for mercy, to claim ignorance of galactic protocol. That was the usual approach of newly spacefaring races when they inevitably ran afoul of the complex web of territorial claims that covered nearly every habitable planet. Instead, James smiled. "Honored counselors," he said, his voice strong and clear. "Before these proceedings continue, I request permission to present evidence relevant to this matter." The council members exchanged glances. This wasn't the response they had anticipated. After a moment, the archivist nodded. "Very well. Present your evidence." James activated the small device on his wrist. The chamber's main display changed, now showing ancient star charts and documentation written in a dozen different alien languages. "These are the original claim documents from the Galactic Archives," James explained. "Note the specific language regarding the Orvax claim to these systems. They filed for developmental reservation, not colonization rights." He highlighted sections of the text, which enlarged on the display. "According to Statute 7289 of Galactic Law, developmental reservation expires after 200 standard years if no measurable progress has been made toward actual development. The Orvax never visited these systems after filing their claims. Our research confirms this, and I believe your own records will as well." Stunned silence filled the chamber. The human had just cited an obscure statute that many of the gathered representatives themselves didn't know. Furthermore, James continued, pressing his advantage, Earth filed standard notification of colonization intent with the Galactic Registry Office 5 years ago. We received no objections within the mandated response period. The display shifted again, showing receipt confirmations from the Registry Office. Counselor Vrex leaned forward, compound eyes reflecting light and unsettling patterns. "The Registry Office is a minor bureaucratic entity. No spacefaring species relies solely on their notifications." James nodded in acknowledgement, which is why we also sent direct diplomatic communiques to 27 major powers, including the Orvax Federation. "We have confirmation of receipt for all messages." More documentation appeared on the screen, diplomatic dispatches with timestamp verifications that couldn't be faked. The chamber erupted in whispers. This was not proceeding as expected. The human wasn't begging for leniency or pleading ignorance. He was fighting back with their own laws and procedures. This is irregularly thorough for a species with less than 2 decades of interstellar capability, said the Lumen representative, voice modulator giving their words a musical quality despite the suspicious tone. James met the counselor's gaze steadily. Humanity has learned that proper preparation prevents poor performance. Yet you colonized 11 worlds in 10 years, countered Drakkar. Such rapid expansion is unprecedented and threatens stability. With respect, Counselor, James replied, there is no statute limiting the pace of lawful expansion. Would you have us artificially slow our growth to appear less threatening? The question hung in the air, dangerous in its directness. It came too close to acknowledging what many in the chamber knew, but none would say. That the Council often manipulated younger species, keeping them dependent and controllable. The archivist's skin had darkened slightly, a sign of discomfort in their species. Ambassador Walker, you seem remarkably well versed in galactic law for a representative of such a young, spacefaring civilization. James smiled again. Humans are naturally curious. When we realized we weren't alone in the universe, we dedicated considerable resources to understanding the society we were joining. And yet you have declined 3 invitations to join the Protection Compact, noted another counselor. Most young species eagerly accept our guidance. We wish to establish ourselves first, James replied carefully, to understand our place in the galactic community before entering into binding agreements. What? He didn't say what everyone in the chamber was beginning to realize was that humanity had been studying them all carefully, learning the rules of a game they weren't supposed to be skilled at yet, finding the loopholes and protections that would allow them to expand without becoming another client species, dependent on council approval. This council session was called to address a specific complaint from the Orvax Federation, the archivist said finally. Given the evidence presented, we must acknowledge that humans have acted within technical compliance of established law. The Orvax representative, a stocky being with metallic skin, stood from their seat. This is outrageous. These primitive newcomers have followed the letter of our laws, interrupted Counselor Vrex, perhaps more diligently than some who have been among the stars for millennia. The rebuke silenced the Orvax representative, who sat down, metal skin flushing dark with humiliation. James maintained his diplomatic posture, but inwardly he felt relief. The first test had been passed. Humanity had anticipated the Council would eventually summon them on some pretense, looking to establish dominance over the upstart species. Earth's leaders had prepared him extensively for this moment. There is another matter, said Drakkar suddenly, scales shifting to a deep purple, a color James didn't recognize from his briefings on Drakkar emotional displays. Human military vessels have been observed with technology beyond what your civilization should possess. The display changed to show a human defense cruiser. The ship design was standard, but the sensors had highlighted the energy signatures of its propulsion and weapon systems. These energy patterns indicate technology at least 2 developmental stages beyond your civilization's expected level, continued Drakkar. Explanation? This was the real trap. James had been warned it might come. Accusations of prohibited technology transfer. Many younger species had been placed under restrictions after similar accusations, forced to accept supervision from more established powers. Convergent development, James replied calmly. Our scientists pursued different theoretical approaches than those historically followed by other species. Sometimes a fresh perspective leads to unexpected breakthroughs. You expect us to believe humans independently developed gravitic compression technology? Scoffed one of the council members. James spread his hands in a gesture of openness. We'd be happy to share our research and development records. In fact, there are several areas where we believe knowledge exchange would benefit all parties. This offer to freely share technology rather than protect it as most species did created another ripple of surprise through the chamber. It wasn't just that the humans were playing the game differently. They seemed to be playing an entirely different game. This session has extended beyond its scheduled duration, announced the archivist after a prolonged silence. The Council will deliberate on the matters presented today. Ambassador Walker, you will remain on the station until our decision is rendered? James bowed slightly. Of course. Earth looks forward to a productive relationship with... The massive view screen in Earth's United Defense Command showed real-time footage of the Galactic Council Armada. 12 capital ships, each larger than anything humanity had built, held position just beyond the orbit of Jupiter. Their hulls gleamed with an iridescent material unknown to Earth science, and energy readings indicated weapons powerful enough to reduce a continent to ash. Admiral Diana Torres stood before the assembled military and civilian leadership, her face grim but composed. After Ambassador Walker's confrontation with the Council 3 months ago, everyone had expected retaliation. No one had expected it would come in the form of the largest military force seen in this sector in over 500 years. The Council fleet arrived 6 hours ago, Diana explained, pointing to tactical displays. They bypassed our outer system warning buoys using technology we can't detect. If not for the Deep Space Observatory on Titan, we would have had no warning at all. President Li Zhao, elected to lead Earth's unified government during this crisis, studied the display. What are their demands? Diana touched a control, and the booming voice of Fleet Commander Geztak, a hulking Drakkar, filled the room. Attention, Earth government. The Galactic Council has determined that humanity represents an unprecedented threat to galactic stability. Your rapid expansion, development of prohibited technologies, and refusal to accept proper oversight cannot be tolerated. You will immediately surrender all colony worlds, submit to technological restrictions, and accept Council governance. Refusal will be met with appropriate force. Silence fell over the room as the message ended. This was what they had feared since first contact, that the established powers would never allow a newcomer to rise too quickly or too independently. They're demanding everything, said Defense Minister Jackson. Our colonies, our sovereignty, our future. President Zhao's expression remained calm. Admiral Torres, what are our defensive capabilities against this fleet? Diana's answer was blunt. In a direct confrontation, minimal. Their technology outclasses ours in most areas. Our entire defense fleet could perhaps destroy 2 of their capital ships before being eliminated. Murmurs of dismay filled the room. Earth had invested heavily in defense since entering the galactic stage. But the technological gap between a civilization with 20 years of interstellar capability and those with thousands was simply too great. Then it appears we have no choice but to negotiate the terms of our surrender, said one of the cabinet members, voice heavy with defeat. Diana exchanged a glance with President Zhao, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Actually, the Admiral said, we have been preparing for this scenario since first contact. Operation Pandora is ready for implementation. The room fell silent again, but this time with a different quality. Most of those present had heard rumors of a classified contingency plan developed by Earth's Unified Military Command. But few knew the details. Diana activated a secure console, and the display changed to show dozens of small objects scattered throughout the solar system. These are automated defense platforms we've been secretly deploying for the past 8 years, disguised as research satellites and mining equipment. She zoomed in on one of the objects. Each platform contains what we call a dimensional inverter, a device that creates a localized disruption in space-time, effectively creating a miniature black hole that exists for approximately 3 seconds before collapsing. The implications were immediately clear to everyone in the room. Such weapons could not be blocked by shields or armor. They would simply tear apart anything caught in their radius. This technology, Diana continued, was developed based on theoretical physics that differ from the standard models used by Council species. They don't believe we could have developed something like this independently, which is why they're confident in their military advantage. How many platforms do we have deployed? Asked the President. 342 within the solar system, Diana replied, plus an additional 27 around each of our colony worlds. Minister Jackson looked stunned. How did we deploy these without the Council's knowledge? They monitor all interstellar traffic. Diana smiled slightly. We didn't use conventional ships. Each platform was sent using one-way teleportation, another technology the Council believes is centuries beyond our capability. The room buzzed with renewed hope, but President Zhao raised a hand for silence. While I'm relieved we have defensive options, This doesn't solve our fundamental problem. If we destroy their fleet, they'll simply send a larger one. True, Diana acknowledged, which is why Operation Pandora has a diplomatic component as well as a military one. She nodded to a woman sitting quietly at the back of the room. Dr. Emily Nkosi, Earth's leading xenoanthropologist, stood and approached the display. The Council's power, Dr. Nkosi explained, isn't just military. It's built on a careful balance between the major species and, more importantly, on the perception of inevitability. Minor powers don't resist because they believe resistance is futile. She activated her own data feed, showing the complex web of relationships between hundreds of spacefaring civilizations. For the past decade, we've been building relationships with 46 of the middle-tier powers, species with significant resources, but who have been systematically marginalized by Council policy. These species, Diana continued, have their own grievances against the Council. They've been waiting for an opportunity, a catalyst to challenge the status quo. We're going to give them that catalyst. President Zhao looked thoughtful. You're talking about revolution. We're talking about rebalancing, Dr. Nkosi corrected. The Council maintains power by keeping potential rivals isolated from each other, playing on historical grievances and fear. We've spent years helping these species see their common interests. Diana took over again, bringing up a new display showing communication networks spanning the galaxy. When Ambassador Walker confronted the Council 3 months ago, he wasn't just defending our colonial rights. He was broadcasting a message, proving that a young species could stand up to Council intimidation and win. It was a signal to our potential allies that the time is approaching. And now? Asked the President. Now we send the second signal, Diana said. We show that humanity can defend itself against even the Council's direct military power. But you said we can't win a direct confrontation, one minister objected. Diana's expression was grim but determined. We don't need to win conventionally. We just need to bloody their nose badly enough to shatter the myth of their invincibility. The plan, as it unfolded over the next hour, was audacious, bordering on insane. Earth would use its hidden defensive platforms not to destroy the Council fleet, but to precisely disable key systems on each ship. Meanwhile, a diplomatic broadcast would be sent to every known civilization, exposing centuries of Council manipulation, and inviting other species to join a new interstellar alliance, based on mutual respect rather than dominance. This is an incredible gamble, President Zhao said when the presentation concluded. If it fails, humanity could face extinction. If we surrender, Diana countered, we face a different kind of extinction, the slow death of human potential under Council guidance. They'll restrict our technology, limit our population growth, and ensure we never become a true rival. Ambassador Walker's team on the Council station is ready, Dr. Nkosi added. They've spent months establishing backdoor access to the Galactic Communication Network. The President was silent for a long moment, the weight of 7 billion lives on Earth and millions more on the colonies heavy on his shoulders. Finally, he nodded. Proceed with Operation Pandora. 12 hours later, Diana stood on the bridge of the EDS Defiant, the flagship of Earth's modest defense fleet. The vessel was positioned between Earth and the approaching Council armada, along with 30 other human ships, a token force that, to Council eyes, must have seemed like a futile gesture of defiance. Council vessels continuing approach, reported the sensor officer. They'll be in weapons range in 3 minutes. Diana opened a channel to the approaching fleet. Council vessels, this is Admiral Diana Torres of Earth Defense. We have considered your demands and are prepared to respond. The massive face of Fleet Commander Geztak appeared on the view screen, scales shifting in patterns that indicated contempt. There is nothing to discuss, human. Your surrender will be unconditional. Diana's expression revealed nothing of her inner thoughts. Before you take further action, I suggest you scan the space around your vessels more carefully. There was a pause, and Diana could see the Drakkar commander issuing orders to his crew. His scales suddenly shifted to a pale yellow alarm. What are these devices? He demanded. Our sensors detect unusual energy patterns. Those are dimensional inverters, Diana explained calmly. Each one is capable of creating a localized rupture in spacetime, what you might call a miniature black hole. They're currently targeted at your propulsion and weapon systems. Geztak's scales darkened with rage. This is a bluff. Your species does not possess such technology. Diana smiled. Are you willing to bet your fleet on that assumption? Before the commander could respond, Diana gave a subtle nod to her communications officer. Across the solar system, 20 of the defense platforms activated C. The galactic archives were supposed to be impenetrable, located on a planetoid in neutral space, protected by defenses developed by the 7 founding species of the Council. They housed the accumulated knowledge of over 12,000 years of interstellar civilization. No unauthorized access had ever been recorded in their history. Until tonight. Dr. Olivia Reed moved silently through the cavernous main hall, her footsteps making no sound thanks to the sound-dampening field generated by her suit. The massive repository was dimly lit during the night cycle, with only security lights casting blue shadows across rows of data storage units that stretched for kilometers in every direction. I'm in, she whispered, her words transmitted via quantum entanglement to a receiver millions of light-years away on Earth. Unlike conventional communications, this method left no trace, no signal that could be intercepted or detected. Proceed to Section 417B, came the reply from Director Alan Blackwood of Earth Intelligence. You have approximately 22 minutes before the security patrol reaches your position. Olivia moved with practiced efficiency, navigating the labyrinthine archive using the holographic map projected inside her helmet. 3 months of planning had led to this moment. Perhaps the most audacious intelligence operation humanity had ever attempted. Since the confrontation with the Council fleet 6 months ago, an uneasy stalemate had developed. The newly formed Alliance of Independent Worlds now included 32 species openly challenging Council authority, with Earth at its center. But the balance of power remained precarious. The Council still controlled vast resources and had begun mobilizing their forces for what many feared would be a devastating war. Humanity needed an advantage, something to tip the scales. Intelligence suggested that advantage might be found here, in the restricted sections of the archives where the Council's oldest and most guarded secrets were kept. Olivia reached a sealed door marked with symbols in the ancient script of the Council founders. According to their intelligence, beyond this door lay records dating back to the Council's formation, information that had been deliberately hidden from most species. She removed a small device from her belt and attached it to the control panel. The technology was human-designed but incorporated, principles learned from a dozen different species, a hybrid approach that Council security wouldn't be programmed to recognize. Security. Bypass in progress, she reported. Estimated completion time 40 seconds. While the device worked, Olivia scanned her surroundings. The archives were supposedly run by an independent order of scholars, but everyone knew they ultimately answered to the Council. What secrets were important enough to keep hidden after 12 millennia? The door slid open silently, revealing a smaller chamber with a single data terminal at its center. This room felt different, older somehow, with walls made of a material that seemed to absorb light. I've accessed the restricted section, Olivia reported. Beginning data extraction. She approached the terminal and connected another device, this one designed to interface with the ancient Council technology and copy its contents without triggering security. Protocols interesting, she murmured as the first files began to transfer. These records predate the official founding of the Council by nearly a century. The files were in an archaic form of the Council founders' language, but her translation software was processing it in real time. What emerged was astonishing. Director, I'm seeing references to something called the Purge. It appears to be a coordinated operation conducted by the 7 founding species against another civilization. Can you determine which civilization? Blackwood asked, his voice tense. Olivia scrolled through more translated text, her eyes widening. Not a civilization we know. These records refer to them as the predecessors. According to this, they were the dominant species in the galaxy before the Council formed. As more data streamed through, a disturbing picture emerged. The predecessors had been an advanced, peaceful civilization spanning most of the galaxy. The 7 species that would later form the Council had been client races under their protection, but they had conspired together, using predecessor technology against its creators in a surprise attack that nearly exterminated them. This changes everything, Blackwood said when Olivia summarized her findings. The Council's entire legitimacy is based on the claim that they created galactic civilization, that their guidance saved younger species from destroying themselves. It was all a lie, Olivia replied, continuing to download files. They didn't build galactic civilization. They stole it, then rewrote history to hide their crime. A warning flashed in Olivia's helmet display. Security patrol changing route. They'll reach my position in 3 minutes. Do you have enough data? Blackwood asked urgently. Not everything, but enough to. Olivia stopped as a new file appeared on her display. Wait, there's something else here. References to predecessor outposts that may have survived the purge. Locations that were kept under observation for millennia to ensure no survivors emerged. Download those coordinates. Priority 1. Olivia's fingers flew over the interface, extracting the location data. If predecessor outposts still existed, they might contain technology or knowledge that could shift the balance of power decisively. Download complete, she reported, disconnecting her device. Exiting now. As she resealed the door and moved swiftly back through the main archive hall, Olivia couldn't help but feel the weight of what they'd discovered. The entire galactic order had been built on a foundation of genocide and lies. How would the species aligned with the Council react when they learned the truth? 3 days later, representatives from all 32 Alliance species gathered in the secure conference center on Luna, Earth's moon. The chamber buzzed with anticipation as Director Blackwood and Dr. Reed prepared to present their findings. President Li Jiao opened the session, his expression solemn. Friends, allies, what you are about to see may change your understanding of galactic history. I ask that you reserve judgment until the full presentation is complete. The lights dimmed and a holographic display activated in the center of the room. Olivia stepped forward, now dressed in the formal uniform of Earth intelligence rather than the stealth suit she'd worn in the archives. 3 days ago, I infiltrated the restricted sections of the Galactic Archives. She began without preamble. What I discovered there rewrites our understanding of the Council's origins. Over the next hour, she presented the evidence, historical records, location data, even genetic samples that had been preserved from the predecessor species. The Council had not created galactic civilization as they claimed. They had overthrown it, then systematically erased all evidence of their crime. When she finished, stunned silence filled the chamber. Then ambassadors began speaking all at once, their voices a cacophony of shock, anger, and disbelief. The Valerian ambassador, a graceful being with crystalline skin, raised her voice above the others. If this is true, everything we have been taught about our history is a lie. The Council presented themselves as our saviors, claiming they prevented us from destroying ourselves as the predecessors supposedly did. Precisely, Blackwood confirmed. The predecessor civilization didn't collapse from internal conflict as Council history claims. They were betrayed and systematically eliminated. But why? Asked the Tellarite representative, his massive form shifting uneasily. What could motivate such an act? President Zhao stepped forward. Control. By destroying the predecessors and claiming credit for their achievements, the founding species established themselves as the unquestioned authorities in the galaxy. They've maintained that position for 12,000 years by carefully controlling the development of every other species, ensuring none ever grow powerful enough to challenge them. The implications were staggering. Every spacefaring species had grown up under Council guidance, taught that their oversight was necessary to prevent the catastrophes that had allegedly destroyed earlier civilizations. That narrative had justified countless interventions in the development of younger species, always for their own protection, or so the Council claimed. There's more, Olivia said, bringing up a new display showing star maps. We've identified coordinates of 13 predecessor outposts that may have survived the purge. The Council has kept these locations under observation for millennia, suggesting they fear something might still exist there. Ambassador Walker, who had faced the Council months earlier, studied the map thoughtfully. These are all located in regions officially designated as hazard zones, areas the Council prohibits all travel through. Convenient, Blackwood noted dryly. The Drovian ambassador, an aquatic species who attended via a specialized environmental suit, spoke up. This information is explosive, but how do we use it? The Council will simply deny everything. President Zhao smiled for the first time. That's where humanity's unique approach comes in. Throughout our history, we've learned that information is often the most powerful weapon. but only if properly deployed. He nodded to a human woman who had been sitting quietly at the back of the chamber. Maria Takata, Earth's foremost expert in information warfare, stepped forward. "We don't plan to simply broadcast these accusations," she explained. "Instead, we've The nebula's swirling gases cast an eerie violet light across the bridge of the Alliance vessel Prometheus. Captain Miguel Reyes studied the sensor readings with growing concern. Something was interfering with their instruments, creating ghost images and false readings that made navigation treacherous. "Reduce speed to 1/4, he ordered. "Dr. Reed, any theories about these interference patterns?" Olivia Reed had been analyzing the data since they entered the nebula 6 hours earlier. "It's not natural," she concluded. "These energy signatures are too regular, too structured. I believe we're seeing the remnants of a defense system." The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. If predecessor defenses remained active after 12,000 years, what else might have survived? "Can we bypass it?" Reyes asked. Olivia shook her head. "I don't think we're meant to bypass it. Look at this pattern." She highlighted a section of the sensor display where the interference seemed to form a corridor through the nebula. "I think it's a guidance system, not a barrier. It's showing us the safe path." After brief consideration, Reyes nodded. "Helm, follow Dr. Reed's coordinates. Maintain alert status." The Prometheus and its companion vessels proceeded cautiously along the indicated route. The nebula grew denser around them, gases swirling in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, as though the ships were being observed and evaluated. "Captain, I'm detecting a solid structure ahead," announced the sensor officer suddenly. "Dimensions. Enormous. At least 300 kilometers in diameter." The view screen adjusted automatically as the nebula parted, revealing their destination. Collective gasps filled the bridge. It wasn't just an outpost. It was a massive space station, a perfect ring surrounding what appeared to be a small artificial star. Despite its age, the station showed no signs of deterioration, its surface gleaming as though it had been constructed yesterday rather than millennia ago. "Astonishing," breathed Olivia. "A full Dyson ring, generating power from an engineered star. The technology required to build and maintain this. Are we detecting any signs of life?" Reyes asked, his voice tense. "No active life signs," replied the sensor officer, "but there are power signatures throughout the structure. Something's still running in there." As they approached, a section of the station's outer ring illuminated, revealing what appeared to be a docking bay large enough to accommodate all 3 Alliance vessels. "It's inviting us in," Olivia said quietly. Reyes hesitated. Protocol demanded caution, but they had traveled too far to turn back now. "Proceed to docking. All personnel on high alert. Dr. Reed, assemble your research team. We'll deploy once we've confirmed the environment is safe." The docking process occurred with unsettling ease, as though the station had been expecting them. Magnetic guides drew the ships into perfect alignment, and docking clamps engaged with gentle precision. "Atmospheric analysis complete," reported the science officer after several minutes of testing. "The air in the docking bay is breathable. A nitrogen-oxygen mix similar to Earth standard. Temperature is a constant 22 degrees Celsius. That can't be coincidence," Reyes noted. "If this place has been abandoned for 12,000 years, how is life support still functioning? And why with parameters so comfortable for humanoid life?" Despite the questions, the mission proceeded. Olivia led the first exploration team into the station, accompanied by scientists from 5 different Alliance species. The interior corridors were illuminated with a soft blue light that activated as they approached and faded behind them. "The architecture is unlike anything in Council records," noted Dr. Valter, a Solari xenoarchaeologist whose luminescent body provided additional light. "These aren't just functional spaces. There's an aesthetic principle at work that suggests the predecessors valued beauty alongside utility." As they progressed deeper into the station, they encountered rooms filled with technology both recognizable and utterly alien. Data terminals activated at their approach, displaying symbols in an unknown language. "I believe these are research laboratories," said Professor Kaz, a Drovian specialist in ancient technologies. "But the scale of operations here, this wasn't just an outpost. This was a major scientific installation." Olivia had been recording everything, comparing what they found against the fragmented references she had downloaded from the archives. According to Council records, this facility was conducting research into dimensional physics. Specifically, the boundaries between our universe and others. The exploration continued for hours as teams methodically documented each section of the station. Despite its immense size, they encountered no remains of the original inhabitants, no clues to what had happened when the Council forces attacked millennia ago. "It's as though they simply left," Olivia remarked, puzzled by the absence of evidence of violence or sudden evacuation. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. In what appeared to be a central control room, Kaz accidentally activated a holographic interface while examining a crystalline structure. The room darkened and a figure appeared in the center, a being of translucent energy, vaguely humanoid but with features that shifted constantly. "Welcome. Visitors," it said in perfect galactic standard, the common language used throughout Council space. "This automated interface has been waiting 12,173 standard years for an appropriate contact." The exploration team froze, staring at the apparition. It was Olivia who recovered first. "You speak our language," she said cautiously. "How is that possible?" The figure's form rippled slightly. "This installation maintains continuous passive monitoring of electromagnetic transmissions throughout this sector. Language analysis is a basic function. I have been learning your communications since your species first began broadcasting. Are you a survivor of the predecessor civilization?" Kaz asked eagerly. "No. I am an integrated information system, created to maintain this research station and preserve its knowledge until appropriate inheritors could be identified." Olivia stepped forward. "We've learned that your creators were attacked by the species that formed the Galactic Council. We're seeking the truth about what happened." The holographic beings seemed to consider this. "Truth is a complex concept. I can provide data, but interpretation remains your responsibility. Would you like to access the historical records of this facility?" "Yes," Olivia replied without hesitation. "Very well. But first, a security verification is required. Your group includes representatives of multiple species working cooperatively. This satisfies the primary criterion. Now a specific test for the dominant species present." The hologram turned toward Olivia and the other humans. "Your brain patterns indicate you are of Earth origin. Accessing Earth monitoring archives. Analysis complete. Your species has developed along an unusual path. Technological advancement without unified ideology. Internal conflict without self-destruction. Cooperation without homogenization. You are deemed suitable recipients." Before anyone could respond, the entire room transformed. Holographic displays appeared on all surfaces, showing images and data streams that documented the history of the predecessor civilization, a species that had achieved interstellar travel millions of years before any currently known civilization. The records confirmed what they had learned from the archives, but with crucial additional information. The predecessors hadn't been a conquering empire as Council propaganda claimed. They had been researchers, explorers, and teachers who shared knowledge freely with developing species, including the ancestors of the Council founders. The betrayal was motivated by fear, explained the holographic interface as it showed images of the attack. The 7 species that would form the Council discovered evidence of our dimensional research. They believed we intended to bring entities from another reality into this universe, entities they considered threatening. "Was that true?" asked Valtar. "No, our research was purely theoretical, an attempt to understand the fundamental structure of reality. But fear is rarely rational. The Coalition attacked simultaneously across thousands of worlds, using our own technology against us in a surprise assault. The hologram showed the devastation, beautiful cities reduced to ash, orbital habitats shattered, billions of lives extinguished in days. But then it showed something unexpected. Massive ships unlike any they had seen before departing the doomed worlds." "The predecessors fled?" Olivia asked, surprised. "Not fled. Transcended. Our dimensional research had reached conclusions unknown to our attackers. When it became clear that conflict could not be avoided, the decision was made to use that knowledge. The majority of our population transferred their consciousness into another dimensional plane, leaving this universe entirely. This revelation stunned the research team. The genocide that had haunted Council history, their great original sin, hadn't even been completely successful. The predecessors hadn't been exterminated. They had evolved beyond physical existence. "These stations were left behind," continued the hologram, to preserve knowledge and monitor the development of younger species. We were instructed to wait until a civilization emerged that met specific criteria, one that valued knowledge over power, cooperation over dominance, and truth over stability. And you believe humanity meets these criteria? Reyes asked skeptically. Not perfectly, the hologram acknowledged. No species. The Grand Chamber of Reconciliation had once been the exclusive domain of the Galactic Council. Located on the neutral world of Axis Prime, the massive circular hall had hosted the Council's most important ceremonies for thousands of years. Today it served a different purpose. Admiral Helena Vega stood at the chamber's entrance, taking a moment to absorb the historic significance of what was about to occur. As Supreme Commander of the Alliance Defense Force, she represented humanity's military strength in the negotiations that would determine the galaxy's future. Nervous? Asked Ambassador Thomas Rivera, who had been the first human to confront the Council years earlier. Helena allowed herself a small smile. Cautious. The Council didn't maintain power for 12,000 years by accepting defeat gracefully. This could still be a trap. Which is why we have safeguards in place, Thomas reminded her. Phase shift technology protecting our fleet. Predecessor data backups distributed across 50 worlds, and truth broadcast ready to activate across all Council space. Over the 6 months since the discovery of the first predecessor station, the Alliance had moved with remarkable efficiency. 10 of the 13 stations had been located and accessed, each providing specialized knowledge that the Alliance integrated into their civilization. Medical technology that could cure previously untreatable conditions, energy systems that eliminated resource scarcity, communication methods that transcended normal space-time limitations. Perhaps most importantly, they had developed defensive technologies that rendered Council weapons largely ineffective. When the Council had launched a desperate attack against the Alliance colony on Proxima Centauri III, their fleet had found itself unable to penetrate the phase shift shields protecting the planet. The battle had ended without a single Alliance casualty. That defeat had finally brought the Council to the negotiating table. Today's summit would include representatives from all spacefaring species, both Council members and Alliance allies. For the first time in 12 millennia, the founding species would be forced to account for the lie upon which they had built their power. It's time, said Thomas, checking the chronometer on his wrist. Helena nodded, and together they entered the chamber. The room had been reconfigured, replacing the traditional elevated Council dais with a circular table where all representatives would sit as equals. It was a symbolic gesture, but an important one. Representatives from over 300 species filled the chamber, their diverse physiologies requiring various environmental accommodations. The 7 Council founders occupied seats that were no different from those of the youngest spacefaring races. Another deliberate choice by the Alliance organizers. President Li Zhao of Earth, now serving his second term as leader of humanity's unified government, opened the proceedings. Despite the vastness of the chamber, his voice carried clearly to all present. Representatives of galactic civilization, we gather today at a pivotal moment in our shared history. For too long, the interaction between our species has been governed by deception and inequality. Today we begin the process of building a new framework based on truth and mutual respect. As he spoke, Helena observed the representatives of the Council founding species. The Drakkar delegation, led by Grand Marshal Vexcor, maintained rigid postures, their scaled skin darkened with suppressed anger. The Vrex representatives' compound eyes reflected light in patterns that suggested agitation. Only the ancient Lumen Counselor appeared calm, the lights within its environment suit pulsing steadily. President Zhao continued, "Before we begin formal negotiations, it is essential that we acknowledge the truth about our shared past. Ambassador Rivera will present the historical record that the Alliance has assembled from both predecessor archives and the Council's own secret records." Thomas stepped forward, activating the chamber's holographic system. Above the central table appeared images documenting the history the Council had suppressed for millennia. The peaceful predecessor civilization, their mentorship of younger species including the Council founders, and finally, the betrayal that had nearly exterminated them. The predecessors did not destroy themselves as Council history has claimed, Thomas explained. They were attacked by the 7 species that would later form the Council. using technology the predecessors had shared with them freely. Murmurs spread through the chamber as many species heard this truth for the first time. Some representatives turned accusatory gazes toward the council founders, while others simply looked shocked or disbelieving. However, Thomas continued, raising a hand for attention, we do not present this information to assign blame to the current representatives of these species. 12,000 years have passed. None here participated in those events. We bring this truth to light so that we can collectively acknowledge it and move forward. This approach, truth without vengeance, had been humanity's contribution to the Alliance strategy. Many of their allies had initially advocated for the complete dismantling of the Council's power structure and punishment for the founding species. It had been Earth's historians and diplomats who argued that reconciliation would prove more stable than retribution. As Thomas completed his presentation, the chamber fell silent. The moment of reckoning had arrived. Would the Council representatives accept the truth, or would they cling to the lie that had sustained their power for millennia? To everyone's surprise, it was the ancient Lumen counselor who spoke first, its translated voice filling the chamber. What Ambassador Rivera has presented is accurate. I say this as one who has accessed the restricted historical archives available only to the Seven. Our ancestors committed a terrible crime, and then compounded it by building a civilization upon the concealment of that crime. Shock rippled through the chamber. No one had expected such a frank admission from any council representative, much less one of the Seven themselves. The Lumen speaks only for itself, growled Grand Marshal Vexcor of the Drakkar. This so-called evidence is a fabrication created by humans to justify their unlawful seizure of predecessor technology. Helena suppressed a smile. The Drakkar's denial was expected. They had been the most aggressive of the Council species from the beginning. But it played perfectly into the Alliance's strategy. Thomas nodded to President Zhao, who activated a secondary communication channel. If I may address the Grand Marshal's concerns, I would like to introduce a witness whose testimony may prove persuasive. The holographic system activated again, this time showing a figure that caused gasps throughout the chamber. It was a predecessor interface, similar to the one Olivia Reed had encountered at the first station, but more defined, more present somehow. Greetings to all assembled, it said, its voice resonating with a quality that seemed to touch the minds of all present directly. I am a consensus interface representing the combined knowledge of all 13 predecessor outposts. I have been authorized to address this gathering directly, the first time in 12,000 years that the predecessor consciousness has chosen to communicate with this plane of existence. The council representatives appeared stunned. The Drakkar's scales had paled to an ashen gray, a sign of extreme shock in their species. The historical account presented is accurate, confirmed the predecessor interface. However, I must clarify an important point. The predecessors did not consider what happened to be unforgivable. Evolution takes many paths, and conflict between different evolutionary strategies is natural. What concerned us was not the attack itself, but the subsequent suppression of knowledge and the control imposed on developing species. This perspective, forgiveness, from the very civilization that had been nearly destroyed, changed the emotional temperature of the chamber. The focus shifted from the original crime to the 12,000 years of deception that followed. The predecessors chose to evolve beyond physical existence, continued the interface. This was not a retreat from your ancestors' attack, but the culmination of millions of years of development. We left these stations behind not to preserve evidence of betrayal, but to ensure that knowledge would eventually reach civilizations ready to use it responsibly. The interface turned its attention to the council representatives. Your ancestors feared what they did not understand. They believed our research into dimensional physics threatened this universe, when in fact we were simply preparing for our own evolution. That fear led them to attack, and then to build a system designed to prevent any other species from reaching the same level of understanding. Helena watched as the council representatives' demeanor changed. The Vrex delegation's antennae drooped in what their species recognized as shame. Even some of the Drakkar showed signs of discomfort, their scales shifting to mottled patterns. The predecessor interface addressed the entire gathering once more. The Alliance has demonstrated a readiness to receive our knowledge by their approach to this situation. They could have used what they discovered as a weapon, seeking vengeance for millennia of suppression. Instead, they sought understanding and reconciliation. This is why the predecessors designated humanity and their allies as worthy successors. With that pronouncement, the interface vanished, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. The implicit endorsement of the alliance by T